And today we've brought in a diverse panel of alumni who have had those rich, fulfilling experiences at Syracuse University and have great tips for how you students can also experience Syracuse in that way. A lot of people call it squeezing the orange on campus. So we want to make sure that you have that insider information from people who have been where you are today. So that's what we promised you in this session, and we will do our best to make sure that we deliver that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by introducing our panelists. First of all, my name is Matt Wheeler. I am the Associate Director of Alumni Relations for the College of Arts and Sciences in Maxwell, specifically the undergraduate advising group. So the people who give you your academic and career advising, I'm on their team. And my job is to connect you with alumni. So through events like this, we also have mentoring programs and things like that. So if you're ever interested in meeting a specific kind of alum, you can always come to me and I will help facilitate that. Our first panelist is George Edinger. He graduated in 2014 with 2 degrees, one in writing and rhetoric studies and one in television, radio, and film. Today, he is the scripted production coordinator for Fremantle in Burbank, California. George, what does Fremantle do?
So Fremantle is one of the few private studios for television. You probably mostly know them for their unscripted work. I work on the scripted team. We made American Gods for Stars. More recently, we did The Mosquito Coast for Apple. And that's actually a lot of what my time has been devoted to recently.
So scripted versus unscripted, is unscripted reality? I know that's scripted sometimes.
Yeah, so Fremantle does a lot of like America's Got Talent and a lot of those competition shows as well.
Okay.
But my team is specifically just like scripted. It's mostly dramas that they make for a lot of like premium cable and streaming.
Very cool. All right, thank you so much. Our next panelist is Katelyn Olsen. She graduated from Syracuse in 2016. Another dual major. She graduated with a political science degree and a bio degree. Today, she is the project manager for Mathematica in Washington, D.C. Katelyn, what does Mathematica do?
Mathematica is a policy research and evaluation firm. So when the government passes new laws or legislation, usually policies related to social policy, we are usually hired to evaluate those programs so that they can go back to Congress and say, here's the evidence to show you that this policy worked well.
Wow, very cool. It's definitely going to be interesting to our policy studies majors who are attending. And last but certainly not least, Heather Boisrond. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
good. And she was a psychology major here at Syracuse University, graduated in 2000. Today, she's a senior manager of marketing communications for Verizon in Maplewood, New Jersey. And we all know what Verizon does, but what kind of work do you do for Verizon?
So I actually have the privilege of leading up all communications as well as a lot of go-to-market communications as well and corporate events. I have a lot going on. But all that goes on for the wholesale arm of our Verizon organization. When I do go into the office, I have the luxury a lot of times of working from home, thank goodness. But when I do go into the office, I go into our headquarters in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And I'm looking forward to telling you more about it during the session.
Oh, that's great. So, but you have an education beyond Syracuse University as well. Is that correct?
I do, yes. So that entails 2 extra degrees. So I did a master's in organizational behavior, and I completed that out in California. So there's your Burbank connected to George. Nice. And then I also completed an MBA while still working for Verizon. So I took advantage of what they had there as a program. I'm currently at Rutgers in some public relations and additional communications work. So I stay busy. I'm a lifelong pursuer of learning.
I love that. So we'll stick with you, Heather, here for our first question. What experiences really defined your time at Syracuse University?
Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of wild, right? Like, I mean, I didn't really, when I think about it, psychology was not the goal, frankly. It was a great program. but I'm an artist at heart. So, you know, and that was a good portion of when I grew up, a lot of illustration, a lot of mixed media, music and writing and all of that. So that really was where I was going. But I think some freshmen may also understand what I'm saying when I say I wasn't really clear on exactly where I wanted to be in freshman year. And then I felt a little bit of pressure, not from the school or anything, but just that I put on myself to say, oh gosh, I have to figure this out like now. And I want to make sure that I can make a good earning, you know, make a good living. And how can I do that with art? So there weren't the same variety of options for artists at the time when I was coming through. So I was trying to find what options made sense. And I kind of ticked and tied it to art therapy. So that's where that kind of came from, is going in the psychology direction. No regrets, but it was just a different avenue to kind of get to where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that those things that you learned in psychology are in some ways still shaping the things that you do today. Like what about your undergraduate experience are you able to apply today, even though they might not, at least on the surface, look related?
100%. And that's good direction. Again, as you said, sometimes we don't realize, you know, what that actually will play out in doing later on, you know, when it's not something that hits it right on the head immediately. But I use it all of the time, being able to read a room, being able to communicate with people, dealing with the senior leaders whom I have to support a lot of times with getting their PR out there, understanding and reading the market, understanding how to have conversations and to be able to train up our salespeople. All of these things are really embedded in a psychological framework, because you have to really understand human behavior and all. That's marketing, really, at the end of the day. I think a lot of people would agree is marketing is truly based in psychology, is understanding how people think and their buying behavior. And once you can kind of figure out that recipe and just figure out how to do it better than your competitors, then you've gotten to where you need to go. So it really has something to do with what I work on every single day.
Wow, you articulated that so well.
Thanks,
Katelyn, how about you? What experiences, classroom, inside of the classroom, outside of the classroom, what really defined your time at Syracuse?
Yeah, I'd say it was probably a combination of two things. I did both the marching band and the pep band
Awesome.
while I was at Syracuse. So those kept me really busy, especially, and it was a great social circle for me. And it was really great to, being able to sing everywhere, the fight song and all of that, you know, it really brings out the school spirit in you. But I'd say even more defining for me was my study abroad. I studied abroad in Poland. I think it's now called the Central Europe program. I actually attended the first year that they did it. And at that point it was called the Culture and Politics of Reconciliation. And we traveled a lot through Central Europe. And it had nothing to do with my major. I was just a biology major at the time, but it was a part of the world that really interested me and that I'd, learned about before, but I was like, I don't really see like how it relates to me or my major, but I saved up all my extracurricular classes to go abroad, and it completely changed my path forward. I came back, I'd been working in the lab on campus. I was working in a fruit fly lab with genetics and dissecting fruit flies. And I came back from abroad and I was like, I thought I was going to go get a PhD in biology. And I was like, that's not my future. That's not what I can do with the rest of it forever. So I really got more. I added a major in political science spring junior year. I don't highly recommend it. I took a lot of credits senior year. But it was a great experience for me because it really opened my eyes to other things I could do. And I found a real passion for political science and policy that I've brought to where I am today. That's amazing.
Especially the fact that, sometimes I think a lot of students kind of assume I don't know what they assume. The major will kind of reveal itself in an academic sense. You'll take a class and then you realize, okay, that's the direction I want to go. But to hear that it was kind of coming out of a study abroad experience that wasn't necessarily related to that specifically, that kind of drew your attention to that area, I think is so telling.
Yeah, I highly recommend everyone, especially first year students, you have the time now to plan for it. Study abroad if you can. There are programs to make it work financially, but go somewhere you wouldn't ever imagine yourself going. You know, challenge yourself. You don't need to know the language. You'll learn it, or you'll figure it out. I promise you. I didn't know any Polish, but it challenges you to grow, and it forces you to take classes and learn things you wouldn't have learned otherwise. And I think that's part of what college is all about. Is there are very few times in life when you have as many resources and opportunities as you do while you're in college. So take the fun class that might not have anything to do with your major, might not be great in your resume, but you might learn something about yourself that you wouldn't have learned before.
Yeah, absolutely. George, how about you? What really defined your experience at SU?
Yeah, definitely resonate a lot with what Katelyn was saying about I did well enough in high school, but I was always one of those people who asked teachers why we were learning certain things if I didn't see the direct application.
Yeah. And
they tend to sometimes just be like, "Ah, you're learning it for the test. You're learning it for the test." And what I loved, I got to Syracuse, and it's a large university that attracts a lot of people with who are still working in the field, many of them, or held very illustrious careers before they came to teach. And in my experience, I never got a professor who didn't have the why for me, and it was a great opportunity to take those classes that, like, and this definitely, if you are just starting out and you are looking at your core requirements, the classes you need to take that are not related to your major, those are the opportunities really to take the science class that you wouldn't have taken. And that doesn't mean like it's not really exciting to take Bio 101. I took Bio 101. It was great. But I also took Communication Sciences and Disorders, which is not something I ever would have taken because I was a writing major. But it was fascinating. And so look for those opportunities and take advantage of those professors. I spent a lot of time in office hours, sometimes with professors I didn't even have for that semester. And they love to sit down with students who are interested and have, thoughtful questions. And it's just a really great opportunity for that. And yeah, I got to take so many classes that taught me how to think, even if they were not directly applicable to what I currently do. And then the other thing, like one of the biggest parts of my Syracuse experience was I made some of my best friends to this day. And I would encourage you, be dedicated, go to those office hours, do those labs, do all of that. But, explore the social scene at Syracuse. It's one of your first opportunities, maybe, depending on, how you grew up, it's going to be one of your first opportunities to interact with people from a lot of different places and a lot of different backgrounds and make good friends in your major, but like explore like making friends outside your major. And I made such rich friendships there and that, again, hold to this day.
That's awesome. So that's actually a good question for the panel. Where did you find your friends?
Oh my gosh, my floor. That was probably the first group. I mean, I had friends, thank goodness, like everywhere. Is like George said, just I think it's big for you to open your mind up, right? Like really kind of bring down whatever your walls are, whatever your apprehension is, and just go out there and just be open to meeting new people, regardless, because it is a place like unlike no other, right? So started off on my floor when everybody's kind of fresh and green and, oh gosh, let me just get moved in, and everybody's excited at the same time. And then you start to click and you want to go out and explore the campus and parties, let's be honest. And, you want to have people to go with. So it's kind of safest if you're just, let me grab my roommate and maybe the people down the hallway and some other people I met along the way. And then we're in a group and we can go out and explore together. So that was kind of like a good first step. And then also made great friends through work. Like I worked at the library, I worked at the gym, I worked different places. So I would meet people all the time just because they would frequently be coming in and we would speak, and then you get to know new people that way too. So, and through clubs and organizations and stuff. So it was just, there are a ton of ways to meet people. There are a ton of ways to have a great time. It's just about staying open and receptive to new things and new people.
I love that.
Yeah, one of my best friends to this day was my randomly paired freshman roommate. Like we joke still to this day that the only reason we ended up together was because we both checked non-smoking rooms freshman year, and now we've been best friends ever since. And that doesn't necessarily mean like even if you aren't best friends with your roommate, you can still be friendly, but yeah, just be open to those experiences. And I definitely had a lot of close friends from some of the clubs I did. And then, you some of those classes, you'll meet some people. It might be your people in your major and you have that in common, but it might also just be, you take a really cool class and, you're in some breakout group or something and you guys just really hit it off, and stay on top of that. Like, don't lose track of those people when the semester is over. Cause if when you vibe with somebody like that, it's worth pursuing.
I think so. And also, like, from even just a perspective of, as we're easing students into the concept of networking, like, those are the people who know your character, they know your work ethic, they've worked on a project with you. Like, it's good to keep them in, stay connected with them selfishly for that reason. But ultimately, like, the friendship, I think, is the biggest thing coming out of those. Now, Katelyn, I don't think there's any group on campus that's closer than the marching band. So, like, is that your answer?
The marching band is we spend I think most weeks we spend like 20 hours with each other. It's a part-time job in itself, which sounds scary, but highly recommend everyone join the marching band. It's not an audition, plugging that out there.
I love that. How did you get involved with it?
So I did marching band not until sophomore year of college. I did just pep band freshman year. And then because I did pep band, I got involved and decided I did marching band in high school, and I decided to do it in college. I didn't do it freshman year because I thought it was audition, and I was like, well, there's no way to pass muster. It's not audition. I'm a very average baritone player. But it's great. I mean, I just went to a wedding this past weekend up in Plattsburgh, New York, for 2 marching band people who met freshman year of marching band and got married a decade later. So pretty crazy. And we're still in touch, and it was great to see a bunch of alumni this past weekend.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's amazing how many people you just kind of get stuck with who end up being very close. You end up being very close with, especially in college, I think, because you're living through a really important time together. And I think it's telling that's where people build a lot of their strongest relationships is in college, and you see it every day. Okay.
Can I say that there were before when you're talking about the experiences, I just want to also make sure put out there, it was like one of the best experiences with just the variety of courses that were offered. I mean, just even the electives were amazing. For me, I grew up with horseback riding was like one of the things for me that I loved to do. And I even got to do that as an elective. I don't know if that still holds true, like if that's still an option, but I got to do it several times as my elective. And I can't imagine that there are a ton of schools out there that offer something along those lines, just being able to not only have your core curriculum but just have these amazing classes and options for us. I mean, I took Native American religion, I took things that had nothing to do with, my major, or even my minor, but just being able to kind of take them and just learn and live and breathe a little bit. It's just really neat.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good approach to it too, is to say like, okay, I have some interest in this. So what can I do that's close to my interest? Yeah. But then you've all given examples of saying, okay, let me just go for this. This doesn't seem like me. That's something I never would have tried. Let me jump into that and see what happens. I think that's a great way to like expand your mind and just meet people you might not have met otherwise. And also maybe even, get excited about something that you never thought you'd be excited about. What better place than Syracuse University to do that, where you have such variety among the different schools and colleges and in the opportunities that exist here outside of the classroom.
And you meet people from all over the world, just like how Katelyn was talking about how she went and had an opportunity to go elsewhere to let that be a part of her journey. I mean, part of mine was I got to meet people from, one of my best friends coming through was from Japan, so it was just really exciting, not only to learn about her and her culture, but also when she would go home and then she would bring things back and just introduce me to things that weren't even like in America yet. She was watching television on her computer well before that was even a thing. So it's really cool how we all had an opportunity to just be exposed to so many things, even just on campus.
Absolutely. I love it. So, okay. So I tell this to students all the time, they're in these magic 4 years or, 4 or 5 years, whatever it takes to get you through your undergraduate, degree or degrees. You're in this magic 4 years where you have all these things available to you, but inevitably some things, you can't do everything. You make some mistakes along the way. That's life, right? So I always, they probably don't like to hear it from me, but, it helps me, say, if I could go back knowing what I know now, and I can't do that, but I can tell them what I think they should probably do. So my question for you is, what do you wish you knew before you graduated from Syracuse University? What would you go back in time and tell yourself if you could?
I will say I took, I think, more advantage of this than some of the people I was at school with, but I don't know that I was aware until deeper into my Syracuse experience, actually how rich the city of Syracuse is in terms of experiences. I find a lot of students tend to spend all 4 years and barely leave campus. And the campus is wonderful and there's a lot of great experiences. There's a lot of cool speaker series and shows to go to. But Syracuse, the city, actually has people there love their local theater and their symphony, and there's the Everson, there's some really cool stuff in the city, and cool ways to engage with it, there's organization, obviously Syracuse is this post-industrial city that has its economically depressed areas, but there's even cool ways if you want to engage with a city in those ways, there's organizations to be a part of. And as much as you should take advantage of all the resources on campus, I find the thing I notice with a lot of people is they get to senior year and they never left the campus. They never realized how much there actually was to explore. That's just a short bus ride off campus or even walking off campus. And I definitely encourage current students to look for those opportunities, because it's a city that's very different than any other place I've lived.
I love that advice. And what's cool about the city, you talk about it being kind of post-industrial, you have all these little pockets where it's being revitalized and all these cool little artsy ways, theaters and artists and restaurants and all things like that. And I think that's one of those cities that has that sort of thing that I would agree is something that students should be taking advantage of.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I echo that completely. There's just so many different things to do there. And I mean, some of the things that I was engaged in when I was, I would say sophomore year, perhaps. I mean, I used to do slam poetry at some of the local community areas with some of the groups. I had opportunities to do gallery showings. As I had mentioned before, I was very involved in art. But some of that was just exploring. Some of it was through networking with other students. And some of it was just about getting to know my professors a bit more and what they themselves are involved in. Because I think George may have said it before, that a lot of times we have these professors who have very rich backgrounds, they come to the table with a lot of worldly experience as well. So, and they may have brought something to the table where they're engaged. And again, for myself at the time, I was very much so into art. So I worked with one of the professors who was in the, I think it was African American Studies department, and she got me connected to doing gallery showings on and off campus. So that was a big deal, but I would have missed that opportunity had I not taken the time to get to know her better and what she does and what her background was. So, you know, I totally encourage people, get to know not just your professors for what their expectations are of you in that particular class. Get to know them as people. They are people who have their own experiences, and it might very well just enlighten you in some way, you know, that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of go off that, I mean, I have professors I'm still in contact with today, especially my abroad professors. I emailed them, I think just last month, I read a book that reminded me of something we talked about in class. And I was like, hey, you guys should read this book. And like, we'll talk about career things, or if they're in DC, we'll like see each other. I think partly just like from, you know, growing up and being in school, you always see teachers as like the kind of this other category. And I feel like sometimes you forget that they're people too, and they're just as invested in your success as you are. So, you know, some people, you know, if a professor offers something to you, offers you time or a reference, you know, they mean it, and you should take them up on that because they're really invested in your success. And some, you might, you know, I'm one of those people who's like with imposter syndrome or whatever, sometimes you're like, oh, they probably say that to everyone. They probably don't. And they probably, you know, really think that your work is excellent, or that, you know, whatever they're saying will help you, and you should take them at their word and take them up on their offers.
Yeah, I find it's easy to be intimidated by a college professor, right? But I think if you approach them from a perspective of just being, you know, prepared, you know, you're showing up to class, you're listening, but I think you can't underestimate curiosity. Just asking a lot of questions, showing up to the office hours to ask those questions, and then just being grateful for those interactions. Thank you for that lecture today. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. That's a great way just to make a very, just like, you know, in a small way, a good impression with somebody. And when they're thinking of opportunities that inevitably come up through alumni or through departments, whatever else, you want to be the people that they think of. You know, you want to show them that you're there, that you're fully engaged, and you want to get as much out of it as you can. And an easy way to kind of overcome any kind of that anxiety, which I certainly had as an undergrad too, especially in relation to professors, is just to say, could you explain that to me again? Or I didn't quite understand this part. And just, I didn't understand that wasn't a failing on my part necessarily. It was just, I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand it better. And that was really, you know, that did impress them. And it did build a better relationship between me and my professors to, I guess, approach it from a position of curiosity.
Yeah, I think Katelyn kind of touched on this as well as you, Matt, but I think don't like assume that like, you know, if you have a question, don't assume that like there's a simple answer or that you're just like being dense about it. Don't, you know, if you have a request for some help in some area or to sit down with a professor to talk about something, don't assume that like, you know, the answer to it already. Like, ask the question, and if they can help you, if they can guide you, if they can direct you in the right place, they probably will. Like, in my experience, I can't say I ever had a professor who did not appreciate a student who took the initiative to actually come to them with a question, with a follow-up, you know, or, you know, even a challenge to maybe something that came up in class. Like, obviously be respectful, be tactful, but like they are there because they also love learning, and they love knowledge, and they love their field of expertise. And you showing an appreciation and you know, a thirst for that area as well is something that they are going to get excited about, and be, you know, they're going to engage with you as well.
And for most people, these 4 years are going to be the 4 years, right? Like, a lot of people might not continue on and try and get a graduate degree. A lot of people, you know, once they're finished, they're kind of off and on whatever that journey is, and there might not be any variation from that. So You're going to get out of this experience what you put in. It's just like conversations. You're going to get out what you put in, you know, so you have to kind of I don't want to say so, but you want to sow in that intention, right? You want to show them that you are engaged. You want to make sure that they can see that you have put the phone down, for example, that you're paying attention to the lecture, that you are inquisitive, that you have questions, not just questions because you want them to clarify whatever they just said, but maybe just questions because you're intrigued by something that they talked about in the lecture, or maybe you read something separate from the readings, or you saw a YouTube video on something. Just put in the effort so that way they can see that effort and they can give you back even more so, because they're going to be interested if the students are interested, or you can all just kind of go through the motions and only get that much out of it, you know, so take the opportunity while you have it in your hands.
Right. Those magic 4 years. So Katelyn, you mentioned imposter syndrome, which I think is extremely common, especially in higher ed. You know, you move on from high school, you got that kind of mastered, and you move on to this place where suddenly it feels like everyone's just as smart as you, or smarter, or do I really belong here? I think that was a great example. What other challenges did you face in your time here at Syracuse University? And then how did you overcome them?
That's a great question. I think for me, it was really challenging just to like balance everything with like time management. So like, I think like my sophomore year of college, I was the busiest I'll ever be. Like I was in marching band, I was in pep band, I joined the band sorority, I worked in a lab, and I had my work study, and I was taking 19 credits, which is like, can't even process how I did that now. And so like figuring out what worked for me time management wise, finding the planner that works for me, siloing my time, figuring out what works for what. That was a challenge, but like has really just helped me out in the rest of my life. At my current job, I might be managing 5 or 6 projects at once, and that could be overwhelming, but I've kind of figured out what works for me in that time management realm. And college is a good place to figure out what works for you in that sense, because if you fail at like something like that, it's one of those many different things I just listed, it's not the end of the world. That's the end of the day. It's like you can fail a class. People fail classes all the time. It does not mean the world is over or that you're a terrible person or anything. It happens and you move on, and there are consequences, but they're not life-ending consequences, which is, it's nice to have that space for that.
Yeah, like don't let it define you, right? I mean, It doesn't mean make it a habit, but don't let it define you, right? And don't let that be a roadblock to your future success. And this is an opportunity for you to work with teams. It's not, yes, we had to do that obviously with group projects and stuff like that in grade school and high school. But when you get into college, now you have folks who are there with intention. High school, you have to be there, right? We all know that. But college is by choice. Mm-hmm. So because it's by choice, then everybody around you is going to bring something to the table. So you can learn a lot about that and how to work within teams in a business environment. And that's whether you work for a company or you own that company. You might earn, you yourself that might be your company, right? So this gives you an opportunity to really understand how to work with people on a daily basis. Your professor in a way is your client, right? Because they're asking you for something, to deliver something by a deadline. And you need to figure out how to get that done either by yourself or within a team. And your team is going to be the folks you have been assigned with on that group project. So it gives you an opportunity to really like instill some new skills at a different level, a higher level, more than ever before, and prepare you for your next steps, when you leave school.
Okay, great. So it can be difficult sometimes in these sessions to how do I want to put it? You're all out in the world fully formed at this point, right? We're showing off people who are successful, you know, who have graduated from Syracuse University and established themselves in their field. But sometimes I think that can be it look like a leap for students, especially if they're just starting out at Syracuse University. So I guess, so if you could kind of trace your path back to your first year, what was going on in your first year that led you on this path, that led you towards where you are today? And how do you make that connection from what the time that the students are at now to them in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? You know, how do you get there? How do you get to where you are from where they are?
I think so. I was a dual major within 2 colleges at Syracuse, and but I was not initially in. So I was Newhouse as well as Arts and Sciences, and Arts and Sciences was my home college. But in order to qualify to be in Newhouse, my first year I just had to like achieve a high enough GPA, and that was the goal, was like get the highest GPA I could, and that was important. But I also wanted to get the most out of those, like that first year anyway. And to Katelyn's point, so much of freshman year for me was that like time management and learning more about the environments within which I do well, and identifying environments that maybe are less conducive to my success, and asking myself, how do I overcome some of those challenges in those particular environments? So for some people, they might find that they don't do as well in lecture classes that are big lecture halls, but you're probably going to have to find a way to at least achieve like some base level of success in those environments, because it's probably going to come up later, whether it's in your academic career or your working environment. And so I think, yeah, that first year was a lot of learning the types of classes and professors that like perhaps I responded to better. And that informed a lot more of what I sought out as I continued. You know, that first year I was thrown into a lot of classes. I didn't have a whole lot of choice over what they were. I actually can say I genuinely enjoyed every class I had that first semester, which is shocking to me, given that it was like I didn't choose any of them. But I did learn like, all right, like I know I really like classes with a lab. That's great. Like I enjoy that. I learned that just because a class meets once a week doesn't mean it's less work. You will make up for those time, like all that time outside of class. But I found that I actually thrive very much in those environments where I met with a professor for 3 hours a week, and it was very deep and intense. And then you went off and you worked on a project. And I found like that was actually something I did really well with, was like get like the direction you need, and then go off and do your own thing. And I found that has carried through to my career, where I know I do very well with a boss who is a little bit more hands-off, gives me the direction, tells me what the end goal is. And then I go and I execute on that, and I come back, I get notes, you know, and then I keep going. You may find in this first year that the classes you do better in are ones that have very clear linear goals and have a lot more direction. That's not a bad thing. It's just different. And so I would say, like, as much as like Syracuse is going to give you a lot of knowledge, and it's also going to teach you how to think about problems, also pay attention to what you are naturally thriving in, and the places where maybe you feel more challenged, and start thinking about and asking for feedback about how you can overcome areas where you are not as naturally inclined to succeed.
I think that's really good advice. Heather and Katelyn, do you have a good response for us for what they should be doing in these early days to set them up for success?
for me, freshman year, a lot of it was forcing myself to get out of my comfort zone. I grew up in suburban Illinois and was very much a suburb girl. And, you know, a lot of college is pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. You know, it's forcing yourself to go to a lecture by yourself or to network with people. Cold calling or cold reaching out to people, no one's comfortable with it. And once you realize no one's comfortable with it, it becomes a little more comfortable. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you just, I really had to force myself out of the dorm room and go and like become a part of things. And I was not super involved at SU my freshman year because it took me a lot to get out there. Even just going to like the informational meeting to join the pep band, it was like I had to call my mom first to like hype me up. But you know, you do it, and by my senior year, I was too involved probably. So it's one of those things where, and that's, you know, that goes through your career too. You know, when you're applying for new jobs, if you're, you know, trying to network within your company, it's not always comfortable, but you force yourself to do it, and usually 9 out of 10 times, or even 99 out of 100 times, you'll feel grateful afterwards that you did it. You might not be the most comfortable in the moment, but it's almost always worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, really good notes there. And I would also say try and start trusting yourself. You know, I mean, you made it to college for a reason, right? You put that work in, you've been evaluated. You know, Syracuse is not accepting everybody. So the fact that you've kind of gone through this filtration process to begin with, and you've shown up on the other side of it, have some confidence in yourself. Understand that, you know, you have value, you have a reason to be here. You're around intellectual peers. So, you know, take the opportunity and start having some more trust and building some more trust in yourself, and start thinking about, I think somebody had said it before, just thinking about what makes you happy. I talk about like what's going to get you up in the morning, right? So you don't have to have all the answers now. You don't need to know exactly what job and what company and all of, you don't need to have that all planned out. It's freshman year, you know, just right now, focus on, like people have said, time management, putting yourself out there, getting a better understanding of who you are and what you like, exposing yourself to new things, you know, and just kind of thinking about, just start letting it percolate a little bit about what kind of makes me happy? Like, what am I kind of digging these days? And what does that look like? What does it feel like, you know? And then maybe start to explore what resources are available that is in that realm. So, for example, if you're into gaming, go find out. I'm sure they have clubs. I'm sure they have coursework. I'm sure they have certain professors who are like the masters of it. Some people might have Twitch streaming or something. I'm sure you can find out whatever it is that you're into and go explore it a little more. And then also take the extra step of figuring out what's out there that I can do that's in this realm. Like I told you guys before, I didn't do that when I came through. I didn't, you know, have that much confidence when I first started out. So for me, I kind of defaulted to, oh boy, well, I better make a decision about X. You know, I got there now, you know, I feel better in life now. But if I could give you that help now, that suggestion now, so you don't have to waste additional time in your life trying to figure those pieces out, go out there and start learning about who you are and what you want, and it'll come, you know, and utilize the resources around you. And open your mind up to even more. Don't stop at, oh, these are my only options. Guess what? It's not A through, you know, C. You actually have a couple of alphabets available to you in various languages. So just go out there and see what's out there for you.
I love that. So for our final question, this time always flies. All of a sudden, it's time for us to wrap up. But for my final question, I want to go a little bit off of what you're saying there, Heather. You know, as students start to collect these experiences, they're putting themselves out there, and they start to move through their time here at Syracuse University, and it starts suddenly that question of what do you want to be when you grow up is starting to become a little too real, right? Because you actually have to go do it. I would love to hear your experience of how you chose your path and how you decided, okay, I'm going to go for that. Once you collected the experiences and the knowledge and all those things that got you there, which is really all that's expected of a student in their first days at Syracuse University. How, once you started to have to put that into motion and decide on a career, how did you choose that path? And ultimately, what's keeping you there today?
I was waiting for George to go. I thought we had a pattern going.
I gotta ruminate on that one.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. We can probably just bounce back and forth as, we'll probably all just go around robin a couple of times, but I would say it took time. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. It took time. It wasn't like some revelation overnight. I didn't just pop up and say, oh, Marcom, I'm doing that. No, I went through a real journey. I started off, excuse me, when I graduated from SU, I originally wanted to go and get a graduate education, and I wanted to travel. I wanted to do a bunch of stuff, but life happens and you kind of say, well, hold on, let me go and actually work. And what does that look like based on my degree? And, you start having to figure things out. And based on the degree area I went in, like I said, psychology, and I had a minor in sociology, I had to figure out what I was going to do with that. Especially since I wanted art and then art therapy, there were more steps in between where I finished at SU and what I was originally conceiving as a next step, right? So I ended up going into sales. I ended up going into sales because I knew I could talk. I knew I could sell. I knew I was a quick learner. I could figure out products, you put yourself in the customer's shoes. So I knew I can do that. So I was like, all right, let me go do that. And let me make some money, because I want that. I like that. I like making money, right? I want to pay my bills. So I went off, journeyed in that direction, learned a couple of things along the way, figured this wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I could do it. And went off and tried to figure out what the next steps that were. Traveled a bit, lived in other places. My high school sweetheart and I traveled a little bit, had a little boy, and that changes your perspective too when family becomes a thing instead of me as an individual. So went through all of this, remembered I had psychology, figured, oh God, I spent all this money on SU, I better do something with this. And I went into inpatient psychiatric care. And it was a lot. It was an experience and a half, but I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot of, like Katelyn was saying, project management comes out of a lot of things across a lot of fields. You need to learn how to project. I'm sure George does it all the time. You have to project manage every day, because when your boss or whomever you're working with hands you, or your clients hand you a task, the task is the project. So it doesn't matter if it's people. I had a caseload of people. Each person was a project to me. I had to help them. I had to get things done. There were deadlines. So all of that stood true, regardless if it was sales or psych or whatever. But then I got to a point where I said, okay, don't love it. I don't. I learned, glad I did it. Thanks for the money, but it's not my thing. I need to go do something I'm happy with. So it took a couple of steps in between. And eventually I landed at Verizon, and I started in sales because that was what the resume had. But then I had a chance to prove myself and show them I'm a great communicator in writing and verbally. I have a strong background in art, even though it wasn't necessarily implemented all over the place in at SU, I still had it, right? I still had those skills. I had the graphic design skills. I had the artistic skills. So if you get through the door someplace and show them that you have more to you and to your brand you have the opportunity to sculpt your journey the way you want to sculpt it. Just make sure that you open up your mind and you're willing to do the work. Frankly, you have to be willing to push yourself. So if you get those things done, don't worry about where you start. It's all in where you finish.
Yeah, you gained experience, you collected experiences, and you used competencies sometimes that you weren't even exercising, you know, in your education or in your work before, and applied those towards the end goal. And that whole fully formed Heather was what they wanted. You know what I mean?
Still going.
That position that you're in. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're not.
I'm still going. I'm with you. But yeah, and then the other thing I just want to say as like a little caveat is just to remind people, not everything that like makes you happy and gets you up has to be involved in your job. You know, I just want to remind people of that. Like, I've written books, you know, I've created movies, like, and I do that in my free time. So like, don't throw all of your chips on like, oh, it has to be like my 9 to 5. Your 9 to 5 can be whatever, as long as it's enough where you can go in and, you know, say to yourself, like, I can do this every day and I can show up and be the best version of what they need. So I can make sure my paycheck is secure. Like, do that, you know, it's a plus if you love it. But don't forget, like, you have time off. You can go do whatever you want on the side. It's your extracurriculars, like we talked about before, you know.
For sure.
Just want to put that out.
I'm a big proponent of you work to live, you don't live to work.
Yeah.
Like, I like my job and I'm happy to have my job. But I'm also happy to have my life outside my job and to not define myself just by my work.
Yes. Absolutely.
Similar to you, Heather, I had a very kind of like all over the place path. Like I mentioned earlier, I started out with bio. I thought bio was going to be my thing, and then it wasn't. And so when I graduated from SU, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had mostly focused on graduating at that point because I was taking so many credits to finish both my degrees. So after graduation, I went home and I worked retail for a bit and was fortunate enough to have the privilege to have my parents just like welcome me back to their house and hang out and work while I figured it out. And I ended up getting a job in DC as a meetings associate at the American Political Science Association. My work study job on campus was at the Moynihan Institute for Global Affairs, and I was their like meetings assistant. And that's 100% how I got the job in DC. Was just like, I have this events history. It was my work study. I never imagined that it would really impact my career. And I helped plan their 7,000 person meetings. And it was the project management I got from that kind of led me to Mathematica. And it's amazing the very little things that you think, oh, like, oh, this is my work study job, or even working in a lab, you know, being able to bring that up to talk about things that you don't think are going to be the experiences that matter later, often are. And I know, and just to kind of add to your point, Heather, I don't know very many people who have had a very linear career path. Very, very few people graduate from college or graduate from high school and are like, yes, this is it. This obscure job title is the job for me. That's it, you know. There are so many careers out there that it's impossible, I feel like, to like catalog them. So if you don't know what you want to do, that's fine, because you probably will end up at a job that you've never heard of before, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think, you know, graduating from the College of Arts and Sciences, you can do so many things with the skills that you've earned. You know, it's not always that direct path. You know, some other, you know, industries, you might need to go get an engineering degree to go become an engineer, right? But with the majors that we have, you know, the liberal arts and the social sciences, very often you can apply those to any number of things, and many times very unpredictable things. And actually, George, your career stands out as one of those things that I would think, okay, I see a little bit of a connection with the writing, but like it seems like that's a really exceptional place to end up. You know, sometimes you don't always hear people gaining that degree and then moving right into that. So how did you decide that you were going to go into that particular area?
So yeah, I knew I wanted to write. And it's something that I continue to want to do and continue to do on my own. And you know, I maintain a writers group for almost 8 years now. And the question was kind of like, who will pay me to do this? And it seemed like TV was a good place to go. That's not, I don't specifically write for TV at the moment, but I enjoy what I do, and I think I definitely want to echo what's already been said about your job is as important for what happiness it might bring you directly as it does allow you to be happy in the rest of your life. And that is one of the reasons I still stick it out in my industry, is because I still enjoy what I do. Is it like, am I pursuing my dream job? Absolutely. But the moment that the pursuit of that job doesn't make me happy in the other areas of my life, then I'll find something else to do. And that's fine. None of, like, you know, there is no destination here. And I think everybody speaking has made that very clear. It's very rare that you're going to end up at a place where you're like, this is it. I did it. Like, I have no place else. Like, this was the job, this was the goal, and we are done. Great. That's just not how it works for most people. And I know people who I came up with at Syracuse who started in the industry with me and went off to find other careers that they're very passionate about and they love. And people who left the industry and because they just didn't make them happy anymore. And that's a fine thing to recognize. I encourage, this is something that, like, is very hard to know if you are a 18-year-old student, but and for all of us on this call, like, we probably are always evolving in this, but I encourage people to think about kind of like their top values and what the most important things are for them, whether it be family, or like quality time with friends, or being able to travel a lot. Like, think about what those top line things are for you, and they might change over time. As Heather called out, like, you know, you have a son, your priorities, they change. But think about what those top line values are for you and how your job allows you to do those things, whether, again, directly or indirectly. And for me, you know, creativity, being able to be creatively engaged in my job has always been very important to me. And so that's something that I do get out of my job, and that's why I continue to do it. I haven't necessarily gotten creativity out of every job I've held in my industry. But right now I get a piece of that. It's not where I get all of that, like, box checked. I check that box in a lot of different parts of my life. And that's fine. But, you know, I also am always asking myself, how does my career allow me to spend quality time with people in my life who are important to me? And if I ever felt like my job was a big obstacle to spending that quality time, I would reassess and say, like, maybe it's time to rethink what I'm doing. And yeah, and there's going to be, in your early 20s, you're going to be mostly responsible for yourself. And it's going to be, maybe you will decide to make the trade-off that you are going to go, like, headlong into your career and not spend as much time on other things. That is something I did, and I don't regret it. However, as, you know, I've gotten older, I have reassessed at different points, and I've said, like, all right, like, I'm not having enough time for some of my hobbies. I haven't been able to travel nearly as much as I would like to. And so I keep reassessing, and I keep saying, like, all right, like, how do we bring some of those things back into alignment? And how do we maybe, like, deprioritize some of, like, the career stuff and, you know, increase the priority of some of these other things. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to think about what those values are for you. And then, yeah, ask yourself, like, does my job make me happy? Does it allow me to pursue the things that make me happy? And do I work with people who enrich my life? You're going to work with some people that you don't like, that you clash with, and that is to be expected. And you will have to figure that out and problem solve and conflict resolve. But you don't want to go someplace every day where everybody you see makes you want to put your fist through a wall. And I'm not saying that has been me. I have worked for some people who I'm like, I can't work for this person long term because it makes me not like waking up in the morning. Mm-hmm. And that's a very real thing that I hope does not happen for you, but it does happen to people. And when that happens, you ask yourself, like, okay, what are our options? Like, what doors are open? You know, so yeah, I will always advocate for people. If you have a choice, you might not always have the information, but if you have a choice between the job that appears to be the dream job, but it is working for people who are mean or do not encourage you, make you feel bad about yourself, what have you, it's a toxic work environment, or you have the choice of the job that's maybe not the dream job, but it's a great team that's very encouraging and supportive, always pick the supportive team. They will carry you where you need to be, because they will invest in you. The job that appears to be the dream job, but it's working with a team that's not supportive or a boss that makes you miserable, like, it's not worth it, and they're not going to take you where you want to go.
I think that's really great advice. Panel, that's our time. I think you guys provided amazing advice for our students around so many things. And I think all of your advice, especially around experiential learning, putting themselves out there, and just getting involved in so many different ways early in their time at Syracuse University is the big message from this. And I think that they are going to take that and run with it. I know that they will. You know, they're Syracuse University students. We know what they're capable of. So thank you so much for giving your time and knowledge to them. It is an incredible gift to them. And I'm so appreciative of you doing that.
Thank you, Matt, for having us. We're here all week.
Yeah, I know Matt knows this, but yeah, like, all of us are like volunteered to speak with you guys. So, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, directly, one-on-one. So if that's part of our Alumni Connections program. So come to me, come to Kristen Ost, come to your advisor in the College of Arts and Sciences. We'll get you connected one way or another with these 3 alumni and about 700 more. So we're always willing to do this. You can see the value in talking to alumni. They've experienced some things that you can learn from. So you don't have to go out there and do it firsthand if it's a negative thing, you know. They definitely have good lessons, as you've learned tonight. So please take advantage of them and of all the other resources here at Syracuse University. And with that, I'll say good night. Thanks, panel.
Thank you.
Night.